Hello and welcome to the Daily Forex Report for December 2nd. We're looking at the pound US dollar pair, brand new open on Sunday right here. You can see we had a very strong trend line, or have a very strong trend line. Been touched at least 5 times there, on its way to the upside, very close to that, within about 30 pips to the downside of being hit. Of course, that's right at the 16,000 mark. I do believe that's going to hold. And look for it to head higher, looking for a buy off of this trend line and looking for it to move up to the 161.26 mark, roughly about a 55 pip move to the upside, using a stop loss of about 64 pips. So not quite a one-to-one, but we of course would go to break even during the process if we close and we're not quite there. Now, if it breaks to the downside, I'm not taking a trade. I know this is kind of unusual, it being so close and not such a strong trend line, but if we get a break below it and we get a close, and this is the key, a close below this long-term trend lines, then I'm going to be looking for it to head lower and potentially, putting a stop loss fairly close to this, maybe above the high here. If it just breaks to the downside during this next session, then look for it to move lower. So that's what I'm looking for in the pound US dollar pair over the next several sessions, particularly this next session. I do realize we're fairly close to the other direction, but to the upside about 60 pips, 55 to 60 pips there, 64 to the downside for a stop loss, looking for it to move higher. I do believe this upward momentum will resume after moving sideways and testing some lower points, testing this trend line twice over this last week. So look for that to occur. If it does break and close below that trend line, then we could see lower numbers, especially if we get a close below the 16,000 mark. We could go ahead and see it move on down to the 1,8500. And of course, if that occurs, we'll put our stop loss right above this session's high or right above our trend line, depending on when that actually occurs. All right, well, hopefully that will help as far as your trades going into this next session. Let's take a look at our news announcements for tomorrow. We have the U.S. ISM manufacturing for November being released at 10 a.m. Eastern. Consensus on that is that it's dropped slightly from 51.7 down to 51.5. Then at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, we have the Australian Reserve Bank releasing their rate decision for December 4th. Of course, that number is showing that they're going to drop. The forecast is that they're going to drop their interest rates from 3.25% down to 3%, which will be negative news for any carry trades that you have on. But nonetheless, we'll have to wait for the news to see if that actually occurs. If it does, we should see some movement in the Australian dollar. So make sure to keep an eye on that particular trade and that news announcement, because it will affect any carry trades you have currently on. A lot of them use the Australian dollar as part of that pair. Okay, let's take a look at our ranges for this next session. We talked about the pound a little bit. Let me run through the numbers. As far as the U.S. Japanese yen pair, let's take a look at it. It did close higher on Friday, moving sideways overall. I think overall, or last week moved sideways. I think overall a little bit to the upside bias. Look for some resistance up around the 82.85 mark. Also look for some support around 81.65. Now, the Euro-USD pair, it closed higher on Friday, did break the previous couple of sessions highs, did not close above them, though, so kind of interesting. Still upward bias. Look for it to potentially go as high as 130.78, possibly down to 129.21. Look for some resistance around 130.25, and look for some support around 129.35. Now, the pound US dollar pair, we talked about it. Definitely consolidating down, looking for it to break out to the upside, potentially going up to 161.07, possibly as low as 159.47. Look for some resistance around 160.65, and look for some support around 159.59. Now, the US Swiss, last but not least, heading to the downside, broke through previous session's lows on Friday, did not sustain that, pulled back to close It closed up a little bit, down overall, but pulled back significantly prior to its closing. We are looking for it to potentially go as high on reversal up to 0.9325, possibly down to 0.20, down to 0.9207. Look for some resistance at 0.9305, and look for some support around 0.9245. Well, that pretty much wraps us up for today. Until next time, this is Jason Fielder. Good trading.